Hello and welcome to Reporters, the programme that brings you the very best of France 24 reporting from around the world. On today's show, we head to Algeria, where the authorities are managing to keep a lid on social unrest for now, despite uprisings in neighbouring countries. Yet strikes, sittings and attempted protest marches are organised regularly, with young people, who make up the majority of the population, taking centre stage. Among their demands, jobs, housing, higher salaries and political reform. In the upcoming report by Luc Auberger and Julien Alric, we see how Abdou, Soufiane and Marwan bravely take to the streets of Algiers every weekend, hoping for a wind of change.
Algiers, May 1st Square. It's been 10 years since Algerians last took to the streets. 10 years since they last defied the ban on demonstrations. Crowds gather on Saturdays. Each time, the government deploys thousands of riot control troops. The situation is tense. Each time, law enforcement officers do not hesitate to resort to violence against demonstrators who are calling for a system change.
Let's go! Let's go, young people. We'll talk about the press shortly. We're off to find the others now. Let's go!
Abdo is a 27-year-old blogger. He is a young manager who is nonetheless one of the leaders of the protest movement. He is among those who believe in a second republic and regime change. Abdo is not the only one who has come to demonstrate. He is accompanied by a few other militants who are arrested one after the other.
It's Marwan. It's Marwan. He was with us, but there's nothing we can do. Call Karim. Call Karim right away. They have taken Marwan, and you get out of here.
They hit us.
We're fighting for this flag. It's for this we're fighting.
Abdo is brutally arrested. Policemen wrench him from the crowd.
Bouteflika must go. Him and his whole bunch. They're all thieves. They stole Algeria. This is a rich country where the people are poor. There are old women picking up rubbish on the street, and the country is rich. These people are predators. We've had it up to here. We've had it up to here.
Bouteflika must go, like Mubarak?
Yes, he has to go. We are fed up.
After 6 hours spent in a police station and an interrogation which was intense but free of violence, Abdou makes his way to an office in the city centre of Algiers. We are in his headquarters.
We were arrested because we were demonstrating for freedom, because we were demonstrating for democracy. So I think that even if we give our lives, the pride will remain. We are most certainly proud.
This is the place where Abdou, Soufiane and Marwan meet regularly to organise their actions. We were able to meet them there discreetly. In Algeria, there is no free speech. There is a risk associated with speaking out, a risk that Abdou and his companions in the struggle have long since learned to live with.
We're not acting as militants, we're simply resisting, and this is completely prohibited. Algeria has become a police state where the police enforce a culture of fear. It's as simple as that. There's no doubt that we want the system to change completely. Everyone has had it up to here with the situation. The system has failed. At any rate, we want new people in charge. We want to be able to elect our leaders.
We're working so that people will join us. At any rate, the regime is consuming itself, whether we want it or not. It is up against its own contradictions. All of these politicians are destroying the nation.
These young militants are part of the National Organisation for Democratic Change. This is a diverse movement of independent unions, associations and political parties. The president of the Algerian Human Rights League is part of the movement. This lawyer hopes to see a peaceful uprising spearheaded by the young generation.
We have launched an appeal to civil society to be inclusive of this youth. This youth is the product of the state of emergency and of the violence that has reigned in Algeria. I think that a revolution, that a change must be brought about by young Algerians.
The protesters may be calling for radical change, but in Algiers the general atmosphere is not at all insurrectionary. In Bab al-Oud, a working-class neighbourhood in the capital, everything runs normally on days when there are demonstrations. Here, nobody has forgotten the failed revolution of 1988, or the 200,000 deaths during a dark decade marked by terrorism.
The SFF is not participating in the marches because the people are also not participating in the marches. It is possible to change the situation, but it can be done using peaceful means. This confrontational approach brings back old memories of violence and destruction in the minds of the Algerian people. You have seen it on the ground. Participation is minimal. It's a far cry from the feeling of revolt that lies at the heart of every Algerian.
To take the pulse of the protest movement, we made our way to Kabylia. It is one of the regions in Algeria where opposition to power is most entrenched. This has been the case since Algeria became independent in 1962. Akabiou is a small village that clings to the mountains. It is 9 a.m. and a group of young people have decided to freely express themselves in front of our cameras. In general, the fear of the regime is stronger than the hatred it generates. Not here. We entered this cafe where the majority of customers are young and unemployed.
No, I don't have a job. We just come in here and drink coffee. That's it.
A coffee, a cigarette, and that's all.
70% of the Algerian population is below 30. According to official figures, 1 young person out of 4 is unemployed. The actual situation is radically different. The country has a wealth of petroleum. This leads to negative sentiments regarding the Algerian authorities.
There is corruption amongst those in power. Those at the top hold immense power.
Algeria is a dictatorship.
The Algerian people are tired. Since 1962, we've been living in misery.
Such talk is not confined to coffee shop patrons. Here's what the daily life of a young unemployed person looks like. Liège is 25 years old. He lives with his family in a working-class neighbourhood that rises above the town of Béjaïa.
I will bring you to my home. I'm going to describe my daily life and real life in Algeria. Go on, follow me. Allow me to introduce you to my mother, my sister, and my daughter. Housing is one of Algeria's problems. There are 6 of us living in this little house. Whenever you look for social housing, you never find anything. It's impossible. There's only one way to get such housing, it's to bribe someone. The government doesn't take care of the people. Honestly, we don't receive any of the wealth generated by oil sales. We never get anything.
The family survives on the father's pension, 80 euros a month. Liaz does a lot of odd jobs to make ends meet, but he doesn't make enough to deal with unforeseen circumstances.
I've got a goiter and need an operation. The nurse at the hospital said, if you want an appointment, you'll need to give me a bribe of 120 euros.
A humble background, no relationship, no work. Daily life is a vicious circle. Do you feel free?
Not at all. I really have no hope at all. How could I feel free? In Algeria, we are experiencing a form of psychological torture. Algerians are suffering. Let me tell you, it's as if we were living in an open-air prison. In a prison, you see, we do nothing. That's the truth. This is what our life is like.
In the neighbourhood, all of Liège's friends are unemployed. They typically gather together with their backs up against the walls. Algerians have nicknamed them wallers. Since the beginning of the year, despair and misery have driven about 15 people to attempt suicide by self-immolation. 4 have already died. We are now in the small town of Bajana, 250 kilometers from Algiers. In this vacant lot located near a primary school, 25-year-old Abdel Hafid doused himself in petrol last January 28th in a vacant lot. It was 8:30 p.m. Before he died, he cried, "I've had enough." His eldest brother accepted to be interviewed, against the wishes of his father.
I'm completely crushed. I didn't think that my brother would be capable of setting himself on fire. Abdel Hafid never really spoke to me about his problems. He kept it all bottled up inside. He didn't work, just like myself and my 4 other brothers. My father is unemployed. There were 8 of us living in a single room of a house. We have no rights in this country. Now I've lost the will to live. Since Abdel Hafid's death, my mother and I have not stopped crying.
On the streets of Algiers, everyone is hoping for revolution. The aspirations of the Algerian people are the same as those everywhere else in the Arab world: employment and greater freedom. The security services, the army and President Abdel Aziz Bouteflika continue to keep a padlock on the system. They turn a deaf ear to the demands expressed by a vast majority of the population.
Luc Auberger joins me now in the studio. Thanks very much for being with us. Now, your report ends on a portrait of President Bouteflika, and then it pans down to a sign for Algeria's deaf-mute society. So let me start off by asking you, why is the regime so deaf to its people's demands?
True, this is quite an ironic image, especially vis-à-vis the power and the situation today in the country. But true, the Algerian authorities perhaps did not change, or not sufficiently, since the 80s. Let's actually go back a little. The Algerian Revolution took place in October 1988. Now, it just led about 500 deaths, a new constitution, and an authoritarian regime, because the armed forces went back to power in 1992 during a democratic process, and that those armed forces have been really pulling the strings since 1962, have not changed under the leaders of aged people. Bouteflika is now 74 years old, and people around him are aged, and are really based on archaic systems, and they can't really go beyond those. They're really clinging on to power and are having a problem understanding the claims and demands as seen in the report.
So, in the report, we see just how distressed some young people are. You were just talking about the regime and how the people who make it up are a lot older than, obviously, the people who are going through a lot of trouble at the moment. But how did the situation get so bad?
Officially speaking, 10% unemployment in that country. Now, that's quite surprising when actually wandering in Algiers, and when you go to Kabylia, you really feel that this unemployment rate is grounded in the population, in society. People, Algerians, have no access to the national wealth. This is a very rich country based on black gold, with tens of billions of dollars represented by oil revenues, and people don't really participate in those revenues in the sectors in the economy in the country. For example, in the public sector, there is a lot of money. Health, for example, the legal system, education, all those different sectors are now torn apart. People are talking about it. They're suffering. Students, pupils have no resources. So just to really be able to study, doctors have no access to resources. They cannot operate people. In the legal system, judges are just deprived of resources. Algeria today is drifting away because of this authoritarian regime, and the regime cannot really throw doors open, allowing for society to really take advantage of all this.
So what's next for the youth opposition movement that we saw in your report, represented by Abu Sofyan and Marwan?
Those youths, I mean, those young people are really leading the movement and want to capitalize on what they've been doing in the last few weeks and want to get organized and to really set up a structured movement. And that movement could perhaps fan out, perhaps more than today. And they would like to go to working class neighborhoods and talk about change. And they don't really have the right resources and means today. They're somewhat limited, and there are not really many people, and they'd like to do this perhaps, really organize themselves in the forthcoming months and weeks so as to really put Algiers on the map, on the Arab map, and have Algiers within the heart of this demand.
The concessions that have been made so far by the regime.
The state of emergency was lifted by the president, but the state of emergency was an administrative and symbolic measure which did not really have any impact on Algerians on a daily basis. And for those people, the lifting is actually meaningless. And those that really want changes want to really go much beyond this. They would like to have a second republic, as they say, just to really finally have those Algerians to be able to really cling on to freedom.
Thank you very much, Luc Auberger, for your report on the youth opposition movement in Algeria. That's the end of this edition, but you can watch it again on France 24, the website france24.com. You'll find this edition and plenty of others there, and you'll find lots of other reports in English, French and Arabic. Thanks for watching. Do tune in at the same time next week.